Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I am a soul level intuitive serving humans and animals. My name's Donna Norris. Thank you for coming to my channel. If you're new, welcome. Please hit like and subscribe if you like the content that you hear and see here today. And if you're coming back for the latest installment in my Awakening Journey series, thank you. We appreciate your support. I definitely love this and I hope to see it grow. And I have several others, lined up. This has been a really fun and enriching series for me. And I know I just love how I feel lifted up just by listening to the stories. And I know that from the feedback I've gotten, all of you are feeling uplifted as well. So Awakening Journeys is like, if you haven't heard about it, is a series of spotlight talks that my goal is that by revealing all these different paths to different people and how they found their soul purpose, and how they've gone through their journey to enlightenment, that it will show everybody that there's really more than one right way, and maybe spark an interest in you in developing something a little bit deeper. We can't use, we can never have too many light workers. We can always use more. So please feel free, share the light, shed some light, and we'll just take this and see where it goes. And with that being said, I don't want to delay any further. My guest is Sandra Cole. She's an author. She's a grief and spiritual counselor. She's a minister, and she's also a Reiki master. And she has other abilities as well that she's been able to tap into since early childhood. And she credits those spiritual connections with helping her set her up for deeper learning as she grew into adulthood and raising a family of her own. Sandy's just completed her latest book. This is her fourth book, and it's in a memoir type style, chronicling certain aspects of her true life journey that that I think many of us can relate to. So rather than spill the beans in the intro, I'm just going to turn it over to Sandy and let her take it from here. Sandy, so welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Donna. I really appreciate this opportunity to visit with you and with your viewers. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great that we were able to meet through another guest who's been on the show and another mutual friends. We have a couple of mutual friends. So Susan
Yes.
Lynn and Dabney Lawless. So yeah, it's great. I'm so glad you're able to be here today.
Thank
Sorry
you.
to interrupt.
Oh,
Go
no
right ahead.
problem. No problem. Well, I suppose I should start at the beginning. And on my spiritual journey, I was born with what is called a caul, which is simply a very thin membrane that covers the baby's face. And it's of no consequence. It's easy to wipe away. But it has often been related to someone who would have special gifts. And my maternal grandmother was a psychic medium. And so when I was born, my mom was very aware of a caul. And when she told my grandmother, they both felt that I would have some kind of special abilities. And it turned out, as time went on, that I was a psychic medium. And so I grew up with a sense of having a foot in two worlds. There was very much my human side, and then there is this spiritual connection where I seem to have wisdom beyond my years. And my mother and grandmother, because of the times, I was born in the late 1940s, they couldn't talk about being a psychic medium because they, if word got out, you could be institutionalized. And my grandmother lived with that fear her whole life. And so I learned from a very early age the difference between and better. And there was a big difference.
Right.
Yes. So my first real memories of something beyond my human side was at 4 years old. I realized I was just outside and I was very aware that there were other universes. Now, my family was not scientific. There was no discussion that I was aware of about other universes or anything like that. I just
Mhm.
had this knowing that there were other universes. And an interesting thing happened when I was 4. We got our first television, and
Oh,
many people younger than us wouldn't realize that back in the day, they were huge pieces of furniture. And it
yes.
was this great big box with a window on it, in my mind, that was in the living room all of a sudden. And there were different shows that came on. We only had one channel, and it was only on a few times a day. We lived in a rural area of Northern California. And so we only got one channel. And there was Howdy Doody was on, and that
Right.
definitely ages me if you remember Howdy Doody. But he
Yes.
I loved watching that every day, of course, at 4 years old. But in my 4-year-old mind, those those people that I saw on television and the puppets, they lived inside that box. And I related that to us watching over them like we were watched over from the other side. And so that was my perspective of what a TV was. I thought we took care of those people in that box, and they came out and did shows for us. And so it took a few years for that to get cleared away, and I understood the difference. But I started out with those kind of thoughts.
But that's reasonable. I mean, for a 4-year-old, that's actually pretty
Mhm.
astute. Nice.
And anyway, as I grew, I um, ended up having people come and talk to me about things, ask me questions that were way beyond my knowledge. When I was in junior high, I had upperclassmen come to me and ask me about boys. Well, I was 12 years old. I didn't know anything about boys, but I managed to give them some kind of information, and they always seemed comfortable or accepting of the information. And it took me a while to learn that the information was coming through me and not from me. And I
Mhm.
didn't understand that for a while until I was older. But those were kind of the beginnings of my psychic abilities. And I was 13 before I really understood that other people didn't see and hear the things that I did. And if I said things that were out of the norm for them, then they made fun of me. So I really started pushing that side of me aside because I wanted to fit in.
Sure.
And I did grow up in an abusive environment. And one thing that the abuse taught me, among other things, was to be hypersensitive to the energy in a room. And so I've always read people's energy, the energy of places that I've been, that type of thing. And that was really enhanced because of the abuse and the violence that was going on around me.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I've lived that too. Yeah, I remember.
right. And part of my story, of course, is the abuse, which sexual abuse started before I was 3. And then growing up, it just went from the first abuser to another abuser, high school boys down the block, and on to a man that I babysat his son for. And then as I got older and I was working, I got a job at a drugstore. And I started out at 17. It was a program through the school, a work experience program. And anyway, he wouldn't keep his hands off of me. And so everywhere I went, from the time I was a very early age, I was molested. I also had an alcoholic stepfather who molested me. And so I lived in fear and walked on eggshells basically all my life. And that programmed me to accept emotional abuse in my marriage, because he wasn't violent. He never hit me, and he never swore at me. And so condescending words and looks didn't register to me that was abuse. And so that followed me through most of my adult life. And I did have a point in my life where I was really struggling. When I was probably around 20, my guardian angel, who would speak to me periodically, told me one day that I had a choice, that I could either allow my past to destroy me, or I could choose to rise above it, learn from it, and move on. And so that the fact that she told me I had a choice was really amazing to me. And I made the choice to rise above it, to not allow it to define me. And it took a lot of years to work through that. I'm not saying that was a quick decision in a moment that turned my life around. But
yeah, that kind of thing is not like flipping a light switch and, oh, I'll just be different now. There's a lot of layers to dig through. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, please ask questions.
I feel like you're singing my song in so many respects here. We walked similar paths. Yeah.
Yes, we definitely have. And one of the reasons I wrote my book is because I know there's millions of other women and men just like us. And these kind of abuses are going on across our country and around the world. And, people are not able to live their lives because they're just existing in these abusive situations. And I'm really hoping that through my book and talking to others, that I can help them work through that and rise above it.
Good. I hope so too. Yeah. So when you were finished with school, did you go to college, or what happened at that point after leaving high school?
Well, I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. We met at 15, went together for 4 years, and got married at 19. And I had grown up entertaining. From the time I was 3 years old, I had a very good voice. And wherever we went, they always put me up on a table or a chair so people could see me, and would ask me to sing all the songs in my little repertoire. And I sang at church. I sang at, when I was in school, it started in kindergarten, I sang at school. And family gatherings or social gatherings, I was always put up in front of people to sing. And I really, really enjoyed uh, entertaining people. And so I started, when I was 8 years old, I started creating plays. And I would recruit neighborhood kids, and
Yep.
I would direct this play that was in my head, complete with songs, and we'd put them on for the parents. And it was fun. They were often surprised at how good they were, but I actually was very much into being an entertainer. And that was what I wanted to do my whole life. I wanted to go to the Pasadena Playhouse in Los Angeles and be trained. But I was from a very low income family, and there was just no money, and I didn't have any support to follow my dreams. And so, excuse me, I made the choice to give up my dreams and follow my husband's. And that took me into funeral service because that was his career. And so my career was spent in funeral service, which was really amazing, much different back in the 60s, 70s, 80s than it is today, and even into the early 90s. So I spent my life in service and helping others. And there were a lot of amazing things that I learned from that. There's just a tremendous gift in being able to help people at an extremely difficult time in their life. And at that time, funeral service was all about service to others. And so I had a whole different direction in my life. And it was a very fulfilling, though a very challenging job.
Right. But I think with that early, with some of the challenges that you faced in early childhood, it in a way served you well because you're so compassionate and empathic that you can dial into the feeling. You can read a room in a nanosecond and you can dial into what it is that's the root of someone's pain
Right.
and help assuage that just a little bit at a really crucial time, you know. A lot of times I would think in situations like that, people are not used to showing emotions at all, number one, because back in those days, you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. You just got on with things, right?
Yeah.
And at least in my remembrance. And so they're not used to dealing with what feels to me like waves of emotion that you could be fine one minute and then dissolve into a puddle the next. But you were probably really well attuned to that and could help people navigate through it. Am I right?
Well, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
um, I'm not a licensed counselor, but I did go through the training as a grief counselor. And I still do that along with spiritual counseling. Um, and I've learned over the years, Donna, that we go through grief cycles all the time, and it doesn't have to be related to the death of a loved one. And people lose jobs. There's
Yeah.
there's a grief cycle, you go through that. A divorce, that is the death of a relationship, and you go through grief cycles. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And having to suddenly lose your home or something like that.
Right.
And when you stop and think about the number of things that happen in our lives that just really pull the rug out from under us, and we have to work through things, it is a cycle. It may not be, with the loss of a loved one, there's stages of grief, but with each person, you go through that grief cycle in your own manner. It's not like you go through each one of those stages. Everybody does. It jumps around.
Right.
And that's the way it is with so many things in our life when you think about it. And so I still do counseling with people on all kinds of things, because in talking to them, it relates back the depression or just challenges that they're facing. I can see well that they're in a grief cycle because of their marriage ended and they don't know where they're going in their life, and
Yeah.
you know, all that kind of stuff. When COVID hit and people lost their jobs and, you know, would talk to me about it, it was grief. You know, they were looking for jobs, not knowing how they were going to move on, which is also often an issue with people when we lose a loved one. Who am I even more because my husband has passed, or my my parents have passed, and people have to re-identify themselves. And so there's lots of areas in our lives where we go through that cycle.
It's a loss of security on
Yes,
many
it is.
different levels
Yes, it
that
is.
we grieve, is the loss of sense of security. And
Mm-hmm.
you can get it back. That's the good news. It just, it takes some doing. It takes some time.
Right. Yeah. And you just have to allow yourself to work through it. A difficult part about grief is people don't want to deal with it. And so they just stuff it down. And uh, and the thing about grief is that if you don't work through it, it builds up inside you, and then it'll come out when you least expect it.
Or
It'll
want it.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Something down the road years later will trigger in you, and all that will surface. And I talk about that in my book because that happened to me after 40 plus years. I left my husband to start over in a town where I knew no one, and starting out living for the first time on my own. And it was a very scary thing. And it triggered in me all the years of the abuse from when I was a child and unprotected. My mom knew,
Right.
and never protected me. And then I went into this marriage with the love of my life. And after a few years, it started showing up that he had narcissistic tendencies. I didn't know anything about narcissism. And so over the years, I just thought he was moody. He was moody. And it became a real challenge in our relationship because I never knew from one moment to the next who he would be. He was an absolutely wonderful man. And when he was in a good mood, there wasn't a finer person on the planet. But
Yep.
he could just flip in an instant, and not to other people, but to me, he was very condescending, and would also give me the silent treatment. And all of those things chipped away at me the same way all those years of being sexually and physically abused and verbally abused by when I was growing up.
Sure.
And so it just got to a point where I either was going to take my life or I was going to save it. And I chose to save it. And I left.
Yeah. Good for you. Because
I'm glad I made the choice to save my life.
Yes. Well, and we're all lucky for it too.
Oh,
We can't
thank
always expect someone else to be our white knight. We have to be our own white knight. And you've certainly done that for yourself. So
well,
it's not just, you've gone on to not just survive that, but thrive in your life today, in my opinion. I just think it's completely amazing all the things that you're doing now, writing books and moving on. Anyway, I'm gonna let you tell it.
oh no,
Go right
that's
ahead.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate your support. But part of what I was referring to earlier is that if you don't deal with grief, it'll show up when you least expect it. And living on my own and not knowing anyone, I had a lot of time to myself. And all those years of stuff that I had buried and not dealt with just came spewing forth. And I cried for weeks and
Mhm.
realized that I was crying from a place so deep within me that I didn't even know that place existed, and that I needed to get all that out and deal with it. And it was years and years of grief that had built up. Now, we were very successful people, and on the outside, the absolute picture perfect family. And much of that was true, except behind closed doors or when someone else was around, I dealt with this narcissistic personality that wasn't what everybody else saw. And our employees saw a little bit of that. But if you know about a narcissist, they never do anything wrong. And so
Not in
I
their
had,
opinion.
in their opinion, it was always my fault. And even if I had nothing to do with it, it was my fault. And so all that bubbled up and just poured out my eyes and my heart. And I had to walk myself through that. And it took a few years actually to work through that and get to where I am now. But that is what birthed the book. My book is called Programmed. Don't let the darkness of your past dim the light of your future. And
Oh,
I'm
beautiful.
really hoping that other people will see themselves in my story and realize that you don't have to live like this. We we were not put on the earth by a loving God who wants us to suffer and be put down. And we are all worthy. And so I just want to tell my story and speak to people and support them in their journey to be the best they can be, and let go of those things in their lives and the people in their lives that keep them put down and suppressed.
Right. It's possible to detach with love. And, when you can work to that point, sometimes you do just have to leave and then get to the detaching with love part a little bit later. But it is possible to maintain love and compassion for empathy toward a person, but just do it from a distance. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to keep signing up for it anymore. That was huge for me in
Yes.
my own journey. Yeah.
Yes, I
So,
I will always have. In fact, I dedicated my book to my former husband and my children. But under the part for my former husband, I just said that I will forever be grateful for the love we shared, all we built together, the children we raised, and all of that. But
mhm.
I actually am more grateful for the things that broke me, because it made me learn to stand on my own 2 feet and believe and trust in myself. And I'd always thought he was the love of my life, but I realized in the end, he was my greatest teacher. And I can be very friendly with him. I don't have any trouble communicating with him or seeing him. If we have a get together as a family, I can be there with him and his wife and do fine. But I am thankful every morning that I don't have to live with him and put up with that narcissism.
Good for you. Yeah.
I don't want to
It's nice
paint
too that you can make it comfortable for your children and your grandchildren too, so that there are no awkward moments because you've done that hard work, that soul searching
Right.
work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. I don't mean to paint him as a horrible person. It's just that over the years, our marriage just didn't really work anymore. And I wasn't strong enough to leave. And I hung on because of my vows and because he also had this very gentle and loving and beautiful side of him. And I held on for those moments. But in the end, I realized that there just weren't very many of those moments left. And there were all these moments that were just chipping away at who I was. And I can give you an example. There's tons of examples in my book, but one in particular that I've found that other women have dealt with. And this goes both ways. I talk about the abuse not just coming from men. There are plenty of women abusers out there. So there may be men listening to this that can identify. But I wonder, in your situation, Donna, did your husband, when the phone rang or when you wanted to talk, tell your husband something that you just got off the phone with someone and want to share it, did he ever say to you, who called who?
Yes.
Well,
And if they called me, it was like, well, what did they want? I mean, I got the third degree on more than one occasion.
well, that happens to a number of people. And in my instance, my husband started saying that to me in the late 80s. And we were married in 1968. So in the late 80s, he started saying, if I went and told him, I just talked to so-and-so, and he would say, who called who? And it kind of seemed kind of funny to me, but it was, it was no big deal. I was excited to share with him what I had just learned. And then over time, I noticed that if I said they called me, he paid attention and focused on me. But if I said I called them, he didn't walk away, but he didn't focus on me.
Didn't really listen.
No, he didn't really listen. So a couple of years, I guess it was about 3 years before I left, we were building a home together. And we had remodeled homes for years. And a lot of people, that'll cause a divorce. But we actually worked very well. Well, we were business partners and we worked very well together. But this one day, I got a call from a friend that I hadn't spoken to in several months. And I was real excited to share with him what we had talked about. And he was out working at the site doing some cleanup. And so I went outside and just said, hi, honey, I just talked to Joan. And he said, who called who? And for some reason that time, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, why do you always ask me that? And he said, because if they called you, they wanted to talk to you. But if you called them, you were just lucky enough to catch them. And I just thought, are you kidding me? And I said, don't you ever say that to me again. And I left and went back to our house, which was right next door to where we were building. And I sat there and I said, he does not have 1 ounce of respect for me. All these years, he's been asking me that. And that's why if I said I called them, he basically just ignored me. He didn't walk away, but he really didn't listen to me. And so I have learned that other women who have had men with narcissistic tendencies have gone through the same kind or similar kind of things. And it just was like a dagger in me that he could be, how could he tell me in one breath that he loved me and have no respect for me? And so that was a real defining factor, along with other things that happened, that made me well aware that I just need to move on. He doesn't have any respect for me. And if this is his kind of love, it's not, that's not love to me.
Not serving you anymore at all. Yeah.
No, that wasn't the final blow. Unfortunately, God had to drag me out of that marriage kicking and screaming because I fought hard to save it. It, 43 years we were married and went together 4 years before we got married. So that was 47 years of my life. I was 61 years old and started out on my own. So, and I'm 75 now, and I want to tell all those women out there that think, oh, I just don't want to start over. I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s. Listen, ladies or men, you don't deserve to spend one more minute in an unsatisfying marriage or relationship. Love yourself enough to walk out, to find a way out, and believe in yourself, because if I can do it, you can do it. And I believe in you. I know we all have it in us. We just get beaten down and think that it's our lot in life. And it's not our lot in life. We're made for much better stuff than that.
I remember the first time I noticed the absence of chaos in the energy in the house because he was no longer there. And there was just nothing was getting stirred up, and everybody was just calm and relatively happy and interacting in a friendly way and playing, kidding around. The kids and I were kidding around, and it's like, wow, I could have had this all these years.
Exactly.
You don't realize how much you've missed until, because you've never had it. So you don't know how good it actually can be. And I think that's a message too, that as a survivor of abuse, and I would like to also point out, I mean, you just have no idea how good it can be to be your own person, male or female, your own man, your own woman, and to be in a peaceful, calm environment.
Right.
You don't have to put up with it from anybody.
Right.
It's empowering.
Oh, it is amazing. It took me probably about 5 to 6 months to really settle in and realize how peaceful my life was because of all the abuse. I know you went through this too. You're walking on eggshells from being a tiny child, and then end up in a narcissistic relationship. And so you're walking on eggshells your entire life. You don't know anything different. And then to be on your own and have it just be so peaceful. I never knew that life could be peaceful. It was totally foreign to me. It was like, something must be wrong. And one night and I do talk about this in the book, one night during a major meltdown, my guardian angel said to me, "You'll never have to worry again about who walks through that door, through my front door." I didn't have to worry about my husband walking in and wondering if he was going to be in a good mood or a bad mood. I could leave him at work and him give me a kiss and say, "See you in a few minutes," go home and he shows up a half hour, an hour later, walk through the door. He's mad about something, never ever would tell me what it was, and then not speak to me for days, and would never tell me why he was angry. So many of my years I spent trying to keep everything perfect so he wouldn't have any reason to get angry or be mad, but not even telling me. He said he took the high road by not telling me why he was upset. And
Right.
well, yeah, what a cop out is that? And there were times I found out that he was upset at something that happened at the office after I left, that it really had nothing to do with me. And so here we'd be, and after the kids left the house, we'd sit down to the dinner table, not a word said, go to a community event, talk to other people, but he wouldn't speak a word to me. One time it went on for 5 days, and I finally said, "Are you ever going to speak to me again?" And he said, "I don't know." And then it went on for another day and a half. And when he decided it was over, suddenly he was his cheery self again. And it was like it never happened. And all of a
Right.
sudden he'd want to have sex. Well, I really wasn't in the mood to have sex because he hadn't spoke to me for 6 days, and I had no idea why he was angry. He would never tell me. So,
Yeah.
you
It's
know, at
just not
times,
possible to talk it out. They just refuse. Like, talk
right,
to the hand.
yeah,
There was no talking it out or figuring things out.
yeah, and you know, I mentioned this in the book too. When we first got married, coming from a violent home, he didn't come from a violent home, but coming from that, there was no discussion in the family or between my mom and my stepfather or my mom and my father in the beginning. And so there was just blow up and anger and yelling and doors slamming or bodies hitting the wall or the floor. And nothing was ever resolved. And they would just kind of work through it. And then with my mom and stepfather, after they'd roughed each other up, then they'd have raucous sex. Went on all night long. You couldn't sleep. I mean, it was chaos. But nobody ever sat down and talked anything out. So there was always these raw edges, and the tension would build, and then there'd be another blow up. So when I got married, my husband wanted to sit down and discuss things. Well, I was used to stomping off, and and he would literally put his arms around me and hold me so I couldn't stomp off because he wanted to sit down and discuss it. And I learned to do that. And for a number of years, we did really well at that. And then after a while, this narcissistic tendency really started taking hold. And so we could discuss business things and we could discuss the children. But to discuss something in our marriage that he needed to work on, or if there was anything that we should work on, if it had anything to do with him, he would not even discuss it because he was never wrong.
Right.
And
Couldn't hear it.
so, And so that discussion that we had between us was lost. And he was the one who forced me to learn to communicate. And I'd try to communicate with him, but he'd often just shut down. In the end, he
That's how
would
it
get,
goes.
yeah, in the end, he'd get mad and he'd get right in my face and raise his voice to me. No foul language, but raise his voice. And it was kind of an odd trade-off. At least I knew what he was mad about after all those years of being silent. At least, oh, that's what you're mad about? Okay. But it was good to leave.
Yeah.
I'm a very happy woman.
He can deal with his own feelings now. Someone else's
Well,
problem now. That's the way I look at it.
yes, he has a new wife and she can deal with that. And I'm just grateful I don't have to deal with it anymore. I'm really blessed.
I know. Good. Yes, we are. And I'm really so appreciative that you had the courage to put pen to paper and get this story out so that other people can see, there's a life beyond that situation. That scenario doesn't have to stay your story. If it's your story today, there are resources and there is a way out. Now,
Right.
I know that your book isn't quite ready to publish yet, but that part is in process. But I know that if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, please, everybody understand that I'll have contact information for Sandy in the description of the video. So you'll be able to find her email and find her website too. Sandy, will you have all 4 books available for sale on the website? The other 3 as well?
I'll have the information on them. My website is under construction. It'll probably be within a month that should be up.
Okay.
Sooner, I hope, but at least a month maybe. But you do have my email address. And I've been in search querying agents, trying to find a literary agent that will represent me and my book, and then a publishing company as well. But
Well,
yes,
if we have any literary agents in the crowd, please feel free to reach out to Sandy. The email address does work, and it'll be in the description.
absolutely. Yes, it does. So I am Sandy, Sandy, at amomentwithsandy.com. And that's
Lovely.
Sandy with a Y.
Good, good, good. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that when we do have a publishing date, and you are out on your book tour, that you'll stop back by my YouTube channel and we can maybe do a live, an interview where we can take questions from people in the audience and viewers in the audience. Would that be okay? We'll set that up.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. And Donna, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I also want to thank your viewers.
Oh, yes, they're wonderful. And
Yes,
I hope
they
that,
are.
if this resonates with anyone, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this, please feel free to share the video with them. Anything we can do to help another one. That's what this is about. Light, love, healing, encouragement, whatever we can do to support each other. Right, Sandy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
Bye.
And we'll see you on the next awakening journey. Bye for now.
Bye.